to a special members-only episode of Bigfoot Society. In this episode, I talked to Jerry from just under northwest Georgia. Some very interesting things that's happened over the years on his family property. Non-members will be hearing a 10-minute teaser coming up soon. If you'd like to hear the whole 40-minute interview, you can become a YouTube channel member or go over to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society to become a full member there. Special thank you to Jerry for coming on the show, and if you have situations that have happened in the same area, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Now, let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to Jerry today. He reached out to me about some interesting things that he's been experiencing in his area down in Georgia over the years. I'm really excited to hear what he has to share tonight. So, Jerry, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, and we'll start going down this road.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Well, to begin, this goes back, the first thing that ever happened to me was probably about 19. This is a property south of Rome, about 30 miles, where Polk County and Haralson County border. It's a property that's been in my family for a long time. It's got a lake on it, and had a little, tiny little cabin on it years ago. Back then, this area was very, very rural. No phone, well water. I mean, it was very, rural. But now it's not so much because people built houses around the country, so it's not like it was, but still very wooded. We were having a fish fry out there one summer. And again, I was probably around 5 years old. I think my memory, there was probably 9 or 10 people there, us kids and some adults and the parents and everything. And of course, it was just a little old metal trailers all the place was, but it had a screen-in front porch. And of course, the doors were open because it was summer, but it was, pretty pleasant night. And I was inside the kitchen area with my mother. And those old-timey trailers, if you can remember, this one was like 10 feet wide. It was very small. But it had those crank-out windows where the glass was like louvered. The pieces of glass were like maybe 4 inches, and they were kind of like stacked, and they would flip out. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Okay, that's the kind of window this was right there at the end of the little den area. So on the far end, it was probably, I looked at it not too many years ago. I think it was like 4 feet wide and maybe 3 feet high. Well, I don't know why I looked over there. All the lights were on. And right there in the bottom left corner of that window, and it was black outside, it wasn't a street light, it was just blackness. There was two red eyes looking right at me. And I instantly set into screaming. And I can remember this just like it was yesterday. And everybody came in to see, what was going on. And of course, being a child that young, you're pointing and crying and everything. And of course, nobody saw it but me. And I can still see it to this day. I know what I saw. It was there. But I couldn't see any kind of outline of a head or anything like it. It was just those two red eyes. And it wasn't a bright red like a light. It was more of a deeper red. And, of course, my dad, he was, oh, come on, let me show you. There's nothing out there. And he picked me up, and he was going to walk me outside into that darkness, and I was terrified. And he did. And, of course, I buried my face in his shoulder, and there wasn't anything there. But I have never forgotten that as long as I've lived. But at that same property, like I said, it's got a lake on it and a whole lot of woods around it. Dad used to stay out there sometimes by himself and fall the year and deer hunt or take a fishing trip in the spring or whatever. And he was always talking about hearing a wildcat screaming down around the spillway area of the dam. There's different parts out there. And he said that over the years, time and time again, and I've been out there my entire life, and I've never, ever heard that. So I've heard people say they do scream like that, but it was always strange to me that I never heard it. But he said they did. Later on, about I would say this was the mid-'70s, maybe around 1970 or so, my older brother was staying out there by himself. And this the very same cabin I just told you about where I saw the eyes. And it was a night, he was in the rocking chair on that front porch. I think he was, just enjoying being alone as a teenager. And I had the lights on in the kitchen area. He's listening to some music, just enjoying it. And he said it sounded like somebody just on the back side of that metal trailer, somebody just slapped it really hard, just one time. And, all this kind of stuff was like that was before any kind of Bigfoot shows came on TV or anything. So you didn't hear about stuff like that until, years later we get talking about it. Of course, what I saw when I was a kid. So just strange things like that from, back in the 70s.
Jerry, real quick before we go past it, thinking back to those red eyes that you saw, do you remember how far apart those were?
Looking back, and like I said, even though that has been about 55 years ago, well, not 55, but it's been over 50 years since it happened, I would easily say 4 inches.
Okay.
That's how vivid it is in my imagination. And from where I was to where that wall and that glass was probably about 8 feet. So I was pretty close to it. Like I said, I didn't see any kind of facial features, outline of the head, just those eyes, because it seemed like maybe they were not right up against the glass, but maybe pulled back like a foot away or so. But they were there. I saw it. I mean, I've thought about it my whole life, and it was there. It was nothing. There was nothing in the kitchen that, had those kind of lights. I mean, they were there.
And so you're saying that those eyes right outside the window, how high up would those have to been? Is that what you're saying when you said 8 feet?
Well, no, from where I was standing in the kitchen next to my mother to when I turned around and looked was about 8 feet.
Oh, okay.
Now, I did go back to that place years later, and I took some rough measurements from the ground to where those eyes, where I estimated they would have been, it was about 3.5 feet off the ground.
Interesting.
But there wasn't any, it was so far out, I mean, there wasn't any kind of stray dogs or anything like that out there. And we didn't have a dog. So, it wasn't anything, like that. Because we were out there that whole weekend. I think there had been a stray dog around. We had seen it long before then.
Yeah, it almost makes you wonder if it was a Bigfoot, maybe it was more of a juvenile then, if it was, that, not very high off the ground, but still, I mean, that far apart for the eyes, that's interesting.
It was something I will never forget. I've kind of written everything down because there was so much I will forget anything. It's kind of happened over the years. Years later, the next oddest thing that happened to me was when I was about 20 and I was married, and my wife was pregnant at the time. And this was late fall of that year. And my dad was getting close to retirement at that time, so he was actually living out there, but it was at it was another cabin right up from the first one I just told you about. And it was one of those fall time of the year when it was really, really cold. I think that night we went out to visit with him, it was between like 20, 25 degrees. It was really cold for some reason. But anyway, it was early evening, but it was already dark. And of course, her belly was, sticking out from being pregnant. She had about, I think, 2 months to go before she gave birth to my daughter. But anyway, we hadn't had supper or anything, and we hadn't been sick. And it was already dark outside, and the lights on in the cabin visiting my dad, when all of a sudden, I felt like I was burning slap up. And some of the worst case of nausea I've ever felt in my life. And all this just came out of nowhere.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's the list. All right, I'm going to use this space this week to announce that I'll be at the Sasquatch Summerfest in Oak Ridge, Oregon as an attender. I won't be presenting or anything, but I'll be hanging out trying to interview people that have had Bigfoot encounters. If you're from the Oak Ridge, Oregon area or surrounding and you've had a Bigfoot experience, please contact me directly, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Also, Priscilla was nice enough that if you get your tickets through SasquatchSummerfest.com and use code Bigfoot Society, you can get 50% off the cost of your tickets, which is a big amount. So code Bigfoot Society to get 50% off your tickets, SasquatchSummerfest.com, and helps out the podcast as well. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. Here at Bigfoot Society, we're headed to the moon, and here's a current update about going full-time. So here we go. As of 5/22, we are now at 202 patrons out of 824 needed. That's 24.51%, almost a quarter of the way there, guys. Brings us down to 622 left to join the Patreon. So a huge thank you to Barbara, Gregory, Dana, Craig, Jeff, Steve, Ricky D, Norm, Megan, Dan, Daddy Chatty, Joe, Eber, Ike, Jules, Josh, Ryan, Todd, Nathan, Gabe, Bill, Lucky, Megan, William, Bobby Joe, and Inger for joining recently. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
Please let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. You know? Shame on you.
Wait, there's more. Monsterfest 2 is coming up soon in beautiful Canton, Ohio, and I will be there doing a live podcast. If you've ever wanted to meet Bigfoot Society in person, this is the year to do it. My special guest in the live podcast episode will be Justin from Cryptids of the Corn. You will not want to miss this live episode. And then you can hang out with me at Monsterfest. You can go to smalltownmonsters.com to get your tickets. Pre-sale tickets are $20.50, and tickets at the door will be $25. But kids 12 and under are free. How many places can you go to where kids 12 and under are free? Not many. New this year are the live workshops. I'm excited about this. Extremely excited. How to cast a footprint. How to collect DNA in the woods. Ghost hunting tools 101. How to do research. Also, There's going to be food trucks outside this year, and new guests, new speakers, people you won't. I mean, the coolest thing about last year is that I got to meet people I was not expecting to be there. People like Les Odell, John Hickenbottom, really cool Bigfoot people that I never would have thought that I would have met before. And Seth Breedlove made it happen by making this incredible place for the community to get together. Monsterfest in Canton, Ohio, June 28th through 29th. Guys, do not miss this year. If you missed last year, don't miss this year. Head on over right now to smalltownmonsters.com. I hope to see you there.